All right, guys, it's been a hell of a week. It's been a hell of a 4 weeks. I'm gonna do this video update real quick, and I swear, I promise, I've had the MailChimp template ready to go for 2 days, and I just haven't gotten around to making the posts to link into the MailChimp send out. Also, I just needed a couple days there yesterday and on Thursday to decompress. It's been a wild week. So I have sticky notes to remember everything that I wanted to talk about. Obviously, Monday night, Mike Flynn resigned, was fired. It depends on who you talk to in this administration, what answer you get. And that answer changed throughout the day from Monday to Tuesday. You had Kellyanne Conway saying that he had the president's full trust and belief behind him, and then it was, well, maybe not so much, and then he resigned, or was he fired? I don't really know. But then you had the New York Times story come out, corroborated by the CNN story, about multiple conversations between Trump's campaign and Russian intelligence officials back starting over the summer. Not too surprising given what we know about top Trump campaign advisors, Roger Stone, Manafort. I can't even recall them all off the top of my head, but there were a lot of them. And everybody made fun of Manafort for his quote in the New York Times saying that, well, these people don't exactly run around with, FSB badges on their shirts. And Julia Yaffe from The Atlantic gave a really good point to the guys on Pod Save America that, part of the Russian strategy is kind of what happened in Germany. It's what happened in Cambodia, where you don't know if your neighbors are just a businessman or are they a businessman with ties into the FSB? Are they spies who also have this cover? And that's kind of the intent, is to sow discord so that there's not this open conversation between citizens. And I thought that was a really good point. Once again, kind of coming down to someone outside this campaign or this administration saying, well, this is what he said, this is what he meant, and there's, a lot of eloquence lost in between there. But I think in this instance, Julia Yaffe had a really great point. That said, it creates a lot of wonder on our side. Like, is this what someone like Steve Bannon or Steve Miller is going to try and do here, where, you've got this discord, you've got this constant question hanging over everybody? Well, what kind of infringements are we going to be seeing? And it especially brings it up when you have Trump in his press conferences calling the media and journalists the fourth estate of our democracy that, we've all kind of grumbled about in our various jobs as communication advisors. They can be a pain in the ass, but Trump's calling them enemies of the people, and that's terrifying. I've grumbled about the New York Times more than once, especially when I was working in oil and gas, because you see it as such a complex industry and it's such a complex task. And there are so many spinning parts that really, sometimes journalists do get it wrong, and that's okay, because they have to go report, they have to be embedded. And from my standpoint, when I was working in oil and gas, it was equally frustrating because no one in oil and gas wants to talk to them. So they're left to get their sourcing from people who may not have the whole story. So yeah, you get frustrated, and everybody's passing the Kennedy quote around that, you may disagree with them, you may feel affronted, but they're necessary. You have to have them in a free and open society. And to call them enemies of the people is just astounding. He also, on Wednesday, I think it was Wednesday, I typically track what I hear on NPR by where where I was in my commute. And so on Wednesday, I was driving down to the barn at night for an evening lesson as opposed to a date. And this is all erroneous information. But Wednesday, he gave that kind of joint press conference with Bibi Netanyahu and just came out and he was like, 1 state, 2 state, we'll figure out a solution. And it kind of harkened back to the call with the Taiwanese prime minister or Taiwanese president. And you're upending decades of very carefully thought out foreign policy and decades of things that have really guided what we do, not only in terms of Israel, but what we do in terms of NATO, in terms of the Middle East as a whole, which goes out into North Africa. I mean, these are policies that don't just affect the country that you're discussing. Like, it doesn't just affect Taiwan and China. It affects the entirety of Asian relations. So to just kind of off the cuff say, oh yeah, it's cool. Like, why do we have to have a one China policy? Why do we have to have a 2-state solution? It's just really incredible. And then to have Nikki Haley coming out the next day being like, no, we're still on the 2-state track is really just, it's incredible to watch. Because the president's words, I tweeted a while back, that we're really hoping that our allies kind of pick up the slack on, okay, president's saying this and we're just going to chill until they have a moment to clarify. But the fact that you're kind of putting that trust, that expectation on other countries in a situation, I mean, diplomacy is all about words. That's what Hillary Clinton was saying throughout the entire campaign was, foreign policy and diplomacy necessarily relies on what you say. So to have somebody just walk out there and be like, sure, we'll contemplate that. It doesn't work very well. Because what it comes down to then is, do people trust you when you say, well, we're not going to fire that nuclear weapon? So that's kind of what that came down to. And that was Wednesday. Thursday, I heard the beginning 20 minutes of his insane press conference. And that was really that was something. And Slaughter on Twitter was like, well, we can't make fun of the president. We shouldn't ridicule him for his complete insanity and not being able to string 2 sentences together because, the people that voted for him see that as the coastal elite, I'm sitting here in Denver, the coastal elite making fun of those with less education, less whatever have you. And my response to that was, we're not talking about those people. We're talking about the president of the United States. And it kind of came back to when we all made fun of George Bush and his made up words, which seem so innocent now. But, you expect a president, the president, to be able to string a coherent sentence together where you can, get meaning out of it and you can discern certain things from what he's saying. That's the expectation. This is the most powerful position in the world. We have a right to be able to expect him to not sound like a raving lunatic. So yeah, it's crazy. I've been going for almost 10 minutes here and I'm on my second bullet point. This week we had Day Without an Immigrant on Thursday, and that was somewhat successful. Somebody on 1A, WAMU production out of DC, said that you didn't understand the point of it. I was like, well, the point of it is that you're now talking about it on a nationally syndicated news show. So I'd say that's the point. But anyway, that just kind of irritated me. We're about to have Day Without a Woman on March 8th. Get ready for that. I'm sure it's organized by the Women's March, same people that brought you the protest day after the inauguration. So Stay tuned for that. We're going to have some more details, especially here in Denver, about what that looks like. What's Congress been up to this week? That's the big focus for the next week. I know there's a Not My President, President's Day rally on Monday. I think that's kind of a nationwide thing. But Congress is really what we have to discuss. President Trump is going off the rails every other day. And it makes it very hard for them to create a legislative agenda. And so far, it kind of seems like Congress has been on their own. And that's kind of how the two branches work together, is that the presidency has an agenda of things they want to get done, and then they focus on these things. And then that allows Congress to focus on them as well. So far, it doesn't seem like the Trump administration really has somebody putting together that legislative agenda to work with Congress on. They have these broad concepts and ideas that don't really then get funneled down to a policy-centric level. They kind of stay on that campaign level within the administration. So Congress has kind of been doing whatever Congress wants when they're not caught up in the drama. So this week, in addition to confirming Steve Mnuchin, Wall Street guy, I believe Goldman Sachs, because apparently now Goldman Sachs runs the government. Steve Mnuchin was confirmed on Monday, and then Steve Pruitt was, of course, confirmed to head up the EPA yesterday. So that's disheartening. Not altogether unexpected. What's his face? Puzder, there we go. He withdrew his nomination for Department of Labor. Any other administration, I'd say, in a field of really controversial picks. They were talking about yesterday on NPR how, before the filibuster rule was lifted, Bill Clinton's lowest confirmable cabinet member in 92, 93, maybe it was the second administration, my memory it's packed. That pick got passed with 85 votes. And that was like the most controversial pick of his. Because up until now, you had to have that supermajority. You had to have 60 votes to get someone through. The Democrats, I get why we call it the nuclear option, taking away the filibuster. I get why we did it in 2014, 2015. But still, when you're in power, you kind of lose sight of the fact that you will be out of power again, and you're going to have to then deal with this. So now that we don't have that, all it takes is 51 votes, and the Republicans have that. It's a 48-52 split in the Senate. So yeah, that was fun. In any other administration, kind of continuing along that tangent, I would say that Puzder was the sacrificial lamb, that you've got to have somebody who you can put up just to take back down, to show, look, we gave you this controversial pick and now he's withdrawn, and now, you can't complain about any of these other picks. However, in this administration, somebody somewhere said, you can see these 3D chess moves, but that's not really what's happening here. It's a little bit of a stretch to think that this administration is doing something that strategically planned out to a sacrificial cabinet appointee. Sorry, phone call, just totally threw this off. So he withdrew his nomination, whatever. It seems like we're going to get somebody who at least may know what they're doing. It may not be a great pick, but whatever. None of them have been great picks. So Congress, in actual policy changes this week, made it so that you can go shoot baby wolves and baby bears. I believe the baby bear or the bear rule is from helicopters on national park land. I could be wrong about that. But it's great. So yeah, you can now go shoot baby wolves in their dens. And mother bears, I don't know, beats the shit out of me, you guys. I get that sometimes they can be a nuisance to farmers, but you're talking about apex predators. You're talking about entire ecosystems that rely on these things to keep the ecosystem moving forward. It's not really a great move for sportsmen. It's not really a great move for anything, except for this kind of vindictive, we're going to shoot them because they've killed a couple cows. I know that's making light of a farmer's or a rancher's plight, but at the same time, talking about toppling ecosystems is a tough one. I think Sam B had a great thing on Wednesday or Thursday when they were about to do this vote, and she was like, yeah, that whopping giant population of wolves in Wyoming that numbers less than 400. So yeah, it's a little bit tough to get on board with, but that's what the Republicans in the House did this week. So if you have a Republican representative in the House of Representatives, call them and let them know you're not happy about it. Because again, this isn't just the sweet little baby wolves. It's an ecosystem thing. We're facing a potential mass extinction from climate change as it is, and yet we're going to sit here and take out an apex predator, furthering this entire fragility of the system. So that's great. I wrote a post last week all about how states have certain leeway to do regulations for a bunch of things. Wildlife and protected species doesn't really fall under that. When we had the whole sage-grouse issue a few years ago, states can come together and they can create regulations. They can create a whole bunch of rules about preserving habitat and how industry can act in order to, avoid mating season or avoid major habitats. And incidentally in that, they had to look more at wind farms than any other industry because it takes up so much sage-grouse population or sage-grouse land, as well as the noise from the wind farms scares the birds away. So that was a really interesting thing that a bunch of Western states, I think 10 or 11 Western states, came together on to preserve habitat to keep the sage-grouse from being listed as a protected species. So that's kind of the difference there, that states have a lot of power on these things, but when it comes to federal protections and on federal land especially, which is where the whole thing about being able to hunt bears on federal land comes in, states they can't really maneuver in that space. So that's fun. Call your senators now. That's the way these things work. Doubtful whether it will make a difference, but, receipts. 2018 is coming. 2020 is coming. So, also, not just calling. We've got town halls. They're officially on recess now. So, your senator, your representative should be in their home districts, and you should be able to meet with them. So call and push for a phone call, push for a meeting. One of the great things that we're doing here with Cory Gardner is we're having a with or without you town hall. So a couple groups have gotten together and they've said we're going to have a town hall and you can either be here or you won't, but we're going to be here. And that's a great way to get coverage of, look at this. Like we had a bunch of constituents that wanted to talk to them and they won't even show up. So the guy who heads up Move On was talking on Pod Save America about just make sure if you do these things, even if you get 10 to 15 friends together in your house, invite your congressman, invite your senator, and record it. Record your issues and post it on Twitter, post it on Facebook with these hashtags. I'll put those up on the blog here later as well. And it's important to let the media see that, you know, however big you thought the Tea Party was in 2009, we're gonna be bigger. And, you know, it's gonna be a fight. Like, people view the things that the Republicans want to take away as things that now the whole term is relative deprivation. I won't get into a poli-sci nerd too much on you today, but you know, when you have something like healthcare, Medicare, Social Security, the ACA, Obamacare, when you start talking about taking it away, people get very nervous. And so yeah, when you do these things, if you manage to get into a town hall with your actual congressman, don't cede the mic. Don't give up the mic until your question is answered. Get an answer on record that they're not going to take away care for pre-existing conditions. I mean, these are things as little as hypertension or pregnancy, or, you know, not that it's a small disease, but diabetes. I mean, it's common things like this. It's common things like high blood pressure. Or somebody had a story about how they had the stomach flu, but because they had to go in and get extensive testing to make sure that's what it was, they couldn't get coverage then because the insurance companies were like, well, you clearly are damaged goods. So make sure that they're going to cover that and not in these crazy high-risk pools that they're talking about, where coverage then gets super expensive and is unattainable for a lot of people. So yeah, make sure that you get an answer on record. Don't give up the mic until you get it. And again, the executive director of Move On has some further great tips on at the end of the latest Pod Save America episode. This is what I listen to because I'm a giant nerd. So coming up on the blog, I'm going to have a list of new protests, new legislative days. There have been a lot. I kind of got overwhelmed by the amount of things coming down just for the next few weeks as well this week. I also found my Russian politics notebook, and so I'll be putting up a primer on that too, because it seems that we all could use a refresher on Russian politics and the history of the relationship between Russia, or the former Soviet Union, and the U.S., since that seems like we're having like a Cold War redux here. So yeah, I'll get that up later today, and until then, I will talk to you guys later. Bye.